Hey guys, it's Sean Klinger with Vital MX. This is the 2022 off-road shootout. So typically, in years past, we've chosen a bike displacement and a category to compare bikes apples to apples. This year, we threw that all out the window and we want to do an ultimate off-road two-stroke shootout. What that means is we have all the different sizes of displacement of off-road two-stroke motorcycles. Two of these bikes are the cross-country bikes, that is the YZ125X, and then the biggest bike, the KTM 300XC. In the middle, we have three trail bikes. That is the Husqvarna TE150, the Beta 200RR, and the GasGas EC 250. Before we get into this video, huge shout out to Carson City Motorsports for giving us the GasGas EC 250. Without them, we wouldn't have had a 250 displacement in the shootout. We're gonna have 2 days of testing. First day is gonna be a little tight, technical, some rocky hill climbs. The next day, we're gonna go out to the desert, wide open, some whoops, some open sand washes, some trails like that, and we're gonna see how they do in both of those kinds of riding conditions. The point of this isn't really to rank them 1 through 5 as best. It's mainly to decide which bike, which displacement size is the best for you. You know, each individual tester can use in all different categories. And we're gonna really see how these bikes, you know, the pros and cons, where they shine, where they don't. That's the whole point of this shootout. So we're going to start with the smallest bike and work our way up to the biggest. So that means that we're going to start with the YZ125X. This is the only bike that you have to premix the gas. Everything else is oil injected. And this is the only bike that has a Kickstarter, but not really a big deal for a 125. Very easy to start. So the power on this bike is like, if you're familiar with a Moto 125, it is very similar to that. Yamaha has broadened the power band a little bit, which takes a little bit of the hit away, but ultimately there's really nothing on bottom. There's not really much torque, and all the power is right in the middle. Where this leaves the bike as far as what kind of riding it excelled at, actually like faster flowing terrain, kind of 2-track or single track that isn't too technical, where you can really stay on the pipe, stay in the meat of the power. This bike was a blast. Even the faster terrain, big open sand washes, big open hill climbs that aren't technical. Actually, if you just leave it wide open and point it up a hill, this thing climbs pretty well. Anything that where you can really leave the bike wide open, that's what it really excel at. So where it doesn't do so great is technical riding, especially technical climbs, where it's kind of extreme enduro. When you want to use the torque and just roll on the power, it doesn't really work that way. You have to charge, you have to keep it in the meat of the power. This bike would be good for smaller riders, newer riders, even more aggressive riders that you're going to be riding more cross-country and maybe some track. Moving on to the Husqvarna TE150TPI. So this bike, as the name suggests, is TPI, that's transfer port injection, and that means that the oil and gas are injected in the cylinder. You don't mix it. There's a oil tank and a gas tank. So moving up to a 150, it's a little bit bigger than a 125, and with this bike, you do notice that there's a bit more torque, but being a trail/enduro model, they've really tamed down that power, so there's not much of a hit. And unfortunately, because it is a 150, it's a very small displacement motor, it leaves it in this zone that it's just really kind of gutless. It doesn't have the hit of the 125. The 125 actually has some excitement right in the mid-range when you're on the pipe. The 150, though it is easier to ride in the lower RPM, you kind of lose some of the excitement. So where this bike really shines is technical riding. It's more of a bike that is like, if you're going to go explore, everyone in your riding group are mellow riders, you want to go for a long trail ride, this is the perfect bike for that, because pointing it up a technical climb, it does have more of the torque. You don't have to use the clutch as much, but at the same time, it is very light and very easy to flick around. The rider that it's perfect for, a younger rider, maybe a first-time enduro rider, someone that wants to get into very hard technical riding, more kind of almost trials-y kind of riding, you can definitely start on this bike and it's not going to get out of sorts. The type of rider it's not great for is more experienced riders that want to go super fast or wide open riding. Moving on to the Beta 200RR. Now mathematically this bike is right in the middle. From a rider standpoint, it kind of does everything well. I think this was the surprise of the test, in that every one of the testers, almost all the testers, had really great things to say about it. It only moves up 50 cc's from the 150, but it feels like it's in a whole different class of power, meaning it really does have a lot of torque, a lot of grunt down low. You can really lug it. You don't have to abuse the clutch to get the most out of it. This also comes from Beta, which is a company that is an off-road company. This is all they make. And of course, GasGas, Husqvarna, and KTM, and even Yamaha are, they have a legacy in off-road riding. They know what they're doing as far as off-road bikes go, but Beta is like off-road only. That's where this company comes from. So you can really tell that in this motor of how luggable and mountain goaty it is, with the extra torque of being 200 cc's over the 125 and 150. It really is a lot more usable. You don't feel like you have to use the clutch as much. You can pop over things, you can charge, but you can also come to a standstill and still have the torque to get you out of situations. Then even faster flowing open trails, you still have a hit, a kind of an excitement in the middle to use, and a top end. Obviously the 250 and 300 have more torque, but for a lot of the riding that we did and most off-road riding, you don't need a massive amount of torque. So this bike just kind of really did everything surprisingly well. Moving on to the GasGas EC 250 TPI. First off, it's not really the fault of this displacement size. The 250cc bike isn't necessarily going to behave this way, but it is something with the TPI 250s. It's just the mapping slash jetting slash fueling doesn't work great. We've talked to Husky, KTM, and GasGas about this problem. There's not really much anyone can do other than getting a new ECU. It's just not crisp. It's gurgly and kind of blubbery down low. There's a bit of a hesitation, and that really takes away from a motor I think can do great things and be a great displacement for off-road riding. Even when you're kind of in the meat of the power, it leaves you in this gray zone of there's enough power to kind of be fast and kind of there's more reciprocating mass, so it feels like a bigger bike than the other smaller bikes in this comparison. Overall, a 250 can be a good displacement size for off-road riding. The TPI system hasn't been something that really worked well for these bikes. Finally, looking at the KTM 300XC. This bike is pretty much the king of off-road riding, and for good reason. The large displacement 300 two-strokes, they reach this point of having a lot of torque because of that engine size, but also kind of the benefits of a two-stroke, that they still feel relatively light, they feel very lively, fun to ride, powerful to ride. There's no terrain that's going to be out of reach for a 300. That being said, maybe not the best choice for a beginner rider, maybe not the best choice for someone that is inexperienced or maybe not as strong or not as big, but for most riders that know what they're doing, they can really get the most out of a 300. It was just a blast to ride. You point it up any kind of hill or any kind of technical climb, and basically you have the torque to get over anything. You can stop halfway up a climb and then start again. You really don't have to use the clutch much because there's so much power. Maybe it does feel a little bit heavier. It feels like a little bit more bike to handle than the others in this comparison, but not a ton more. It's still a two-stroke. It's still lighter than most four-strokes. So that's it for the overall comparison of these bikes. Stay tuned for an individual roundtable video of each of these bikes where all 5 testers talk about what they liked, what they didn't, who they think it's for, and the best use for each of these bikes and displacement sizes. Stay tuned for those. Those are going to be dropping soon. If you are on YouTube, please click our like and subscribe button, and thanks for watching.